Welcome to the Riverside Project podcast. We are mobilizing Houston to empower families and transform generations. We hope these conversations will give you a greater understanding of the issues facing our community and inspire you to find your place along the river. Today we have Nanette Lynch and Clint Wiley with Kingwood Methodist Church. We've been working alongside Kingwood Methodist for a number of years now, and we have watched them work humbly, sacrificially, and consistently serving kids in foster care and families. And so we're really grateful to have them on the podcast today to share a little bit about their story. So thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Clint, can you just start off by introducing Kingwood Methodist? What is your church like? What do you do as a pastor there?
Absolutely. So I've been at Kingwood Methodist for about 11 years now. My first 9 years of that were as a youth pastor, and then transitioned into the missions pastor, which has been an incredible joy because the heartbeat of our church is missions. We've always been a church that is more outward facing than internal development, and so it's been fun to be able to shepherd that side of ministry at Kingwood Methodist. This industry, that kind of the foster care industry, has been, I'd say, really kind of the leading edge over the last few years. I always say that my number one job is to say yes. And it's the best job. And to walk alongside people who have a passion for something and to say, okay, how can we walk alongside you and use the connections, the relationships, the different ministries, even within the church to help undergird your ministry and your passion.
That's great.
Yeah.
So how did that get started? Back in 2014, you said, you started figuring out what it could look like to serve in the foster care space. How did that start exactly?
It was August 2014, and a young boy, 6th grader, was walking home from the local middle school, which is very close to our church. And one of the pastors that was in charge of the confirmation for 6th graders happened to be in the parking lot. And she saw him walk up, and she said, "Hey, what's up?" He said, "I am so hot. Can I come in and get a drink of water?"
Mind you, it's August, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
August in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
And he's walking about half a mile to a mile from his school on his way home. And so she invited him upstairs for our youth events on Wednesday night. We have Bible studies and pizza, games, whatever. And he came up and just engaged with the kids upstairs. And my youngest daughter at the time was an associate youth pastor under Clint. And so she drove him home and said, "Hey, if you want to come back on Sundays, or you're welcome. Sundays, 9:30, Wednesday afternoon, please come by."
Yeah.
So that next Sunday, he and his 3 other siblings, there were 2 boys, 2 girls, they walked to church that Sunday morning. And
Just by themselves.
Just by themselves. And I think they rarely missed for 2 years. So they became very involved and entrenched in our church family. Lot of support. They needed a lot of support from the pastoral staff and my family. They became very involved with my both my girls, and they had a lot of needs.
Well, and it wasn't the intention, right?
Yeah.
To start up a ministry or even necessarily we didn't even know that was really a need in our area.
Yeah. Kingwood is not necessarily the area of town that you think.
You
There's a
don't
whole lot of
think
need here.
that this is the kind of a prime area for this. And so it really started with just, hey, there's these kids that experience something at this place that they said, I want more of that. Whatever that is.
And kept coming back.
I want more of that. And so they just kept showing up. And we really felt like it was our duty and our joy to just love them.
Yeah.
And we started to hear more and more of their story, and piece by piece. And I remember we would meet afterwards and she'd be like, "Okay, you heard this, over here.
Piecing it all
we're
together.
trying to piecemeal this story together, and all the while just, I mean, starting to become kind of heartbroken, and I think the Lord was doing a work just stirring our hearts for the things that he cared about in that season.
It's a great way to put it.
Very much.
You mentioned them showing up. Often we talk about, we're asking churches to show up for, vulnerable families or families in crisis. And it's, I think it's interesting to hear the other side of it. They kept coming back, and then we keep coming up, like showing up for them. And then you see this restoration and redemption happening as those two things, the trust is going back and forth. That's amazing. So how did it develop over time after that? What kind of evolved to where you all are and how you're serving the community now?
They were placed at Methodist Children's Home for about 8 to 9 months. Okay. And so once they left to go there, we would still go, of course, and visit them in Waco. And we have maintained contact with them all through still as of this week. 2 of them have been at my house.
That's incredible.
That's another story. But once they left, I found myself with a lot of time on my hands, because I had invested about 2.5 years in their life in a very intense way, as well as my other church family had also been involved in their life. And I just started thinking I needed to find something else to do. So I then heard about CASA, Child Advocates of Houston, and I immediately, it was probably 2 weeks after they left, I signed up for an information class. Within the child advocacy world, I learned how the needs of foster care were great in the Harris County region. Yeah. So I reached out to Stacy, who was the pastor that welcomed our friend into the church. I said, we got to do something. You know what? We got to step up. Our church, we didn't have a foster care ministry. I didn't even know one needed to be had. And so that kind of started the Oasis. The launch of Oasis, with a lot of learning, webcast. Jason Johnson our friend Jason Johnson came out and spoke. So that launched that effort.
It's so interesting sometimes to see, we work with churches all over the city of Houston, some who are kind of in that spot right now. They're saying, after Roe v. Wade was overturned, maybe it was, they just met, there's always a catalyst. There's some reason why all of a sudden your eyes are open to the needs around you, and you're thinking, we have to do something, but we have no idea what to do. And what we've seen often is it really has to do with just increasing our proximity. Just, we get a little bit closer, you get a little bit closer, and then it tends to be the case that you see more and more needs. And at the same time, we're developing and discipling kind of our people and shepherding them and modeling for them. Absolutely. We are this type of church that, rather than moving away from what is broken in the world, we're actually going to be the type of people that move toward. As uncomfortable and messy as that can be, I assume your journey over the last several years in this has not been always lovely. It's riddled with mess, because that's people, Yes. What does that look like over time? So, let's go back a little bit. So you became a CASA advocate, started the Oasis ministry. What did that start off looking like? And
had
then
a donation closet.
A donation closet.
Jason Johnson said, don't start off recruiting foster parents.
Wise words.
Starts small.
I think another thing that did is that increase the awareness within our church, increase the buy-in from our congregation, because they saw a need, and then they were able to meet that need in some small, tangible way by bringing a bag of diapers or donating some clothes, or something like that our congregation started to see, okay, maybe this is a need, and there's some things that we can do.
I know that you guys got connected to a boys' home, or a group home, or an RTC, as we've had on the podcast before. How did that happen?
Well, before the pandemic, it was in 2019.
Okay.
My ministry partner has helped that we met in about 2019. Yeah, it was the Christmas of 2019. Her church in the Atascocita area was drawn into this RTC in North Houston, they needed gifts for Christmas. So her church covered the whole 30. There's like 35 kids there, and then we met after that. So yeah, we got plugged in at this RTC, and that was a turning point for us, definitely.
How so? How did it shift?
Just what you see and hear those boys' experiences. You're getting to have a really close relationship with them, and they bond immediately almost with you. And when you see them in that situation, you think, this isn't summer camp. These kids are in dorms. They're living
this is their life.
This is their life. So that was a year's worth of very intense involvement down there and proximity. You know, and I heard a quote once that hope is found near the ground in close proximity to the struggle. Yeah. And that was just so revolutionary to me because, you go and you hear their stories and you never got used to them asking for you to adopt them and for you to foster them. And, I would say I'm not a foster parent. I can't foster you, but I'm going to be your best friend as long as you're here. I'm going to be your advocate and your best friend. So I would go down minimum of probably twice a week and we just got extremely involved with their school situations. And we had tutors and mentors program started.
One of the things that we talked about with churches, kind of in the early, when we start training churches and equipping them to find a place to get involved, we really start off with like, what's your why? What's the why that we're communicating? We can't even communicate that to our people until we know what our why is for this. And I'm sure it kind of, there's a root, but it shifts a little bit over time because you see more. But what would you say is your why to keep going? I mean, I feel like a lot of churches would be like, whew, I think we've gone too far and really pull back. Or some of the situations you've told me about, you're like, I feel like a lot of churches would just shut their doors and say, we cannot keep for liability purposes or whatever. Like this is too risky. This is too difficult. But you've kept going. What's the why behind continuing to move forward?
Because these kids deserve someone to care about them in a very deep way. And they all know at some point, I hope they know that we do and we did care for them. Yeah. Very deeply. And, the Lord calls us to love these kids. They're there in foster care not because of anything they've done. Every adult in their life has let them down. And so we're not going to let them down. We commit to something, we're going to follow through.
From a church standpoint, you asked the why. And, there were definitely a lot of those conversations behind closed doors.
They have to. It's wise to have those. Yeah. Okay.
Is liability playing a part in here? Is this putting our church kind of out on a limb? We had conversations with our insurance, agency at the church, and it all kept coming back to God keeps opening doors. Yeah. And we have to step through them. If he's putting that in front of us and giving us this opportunity, then we'll figure out the logistics. But the why is because God said so. Yeah. And
it's incredible.
And so I think it's huge that we get the opportunity to say yes to those calls.
One thing that I remember this conversation vividly because over, I don't exactly remember the time frame, but I remember talking to you and to Marla, and you were saying, hey, the boys' home we've been caring for is being shut down. And you walked through that. We spent a couple of very hard days together trying to figure out how to get these kids stable. We fought for them. You guys fought for them. How do we keep them in a place where they feel safe, right, in the midst of all of this upheaval? And then over a couple of months, you guys kept saying, now that the boys' home is gone, we still feel like the Lord is leading us to keep serving this specific group of kids, these really, really hard situations. And we're kind of talking about it. It was the same time that the children without placement kind of crisis was at its peak. And we've been talking about that and what was going on with it and asking churches to step in and provide meals and things like that. And I remember you guys coming to me and saying, I think we want to be a CWAP kind of children without placement shelter. What do you think about that? And I was like, yes, we need that. I know that we need that. But I was kind of a little bit fearful and hesitant because I didn't want to put you in a situation. I want to make sure you had all the facts, that you knew what you were stepping into. Because we've seen other, churches do that and it has not gone well. Like, we know enough about those types of situations that they can be very, very difficult. I didn't want to put you in that. And you guys were so persistent. You kept coming back saying, we have this apartment that we own that's across the street and we want to renovate it a little bit and get it ready. And we want it to be a safe place for these kids and their caseworkers. And I said, okay, I'm going to put you in touch with the people that you need to talk to and let's go for it. And it has been, I hear from so many people, from attorneys to caseworkers to leadership at CPS, that it has been such a place of stability and hope for all of them because it's not even just the place, it's the people, right? It's you showing up with Sonic, you having a chore chart, you providing structure and your volunteers and the other people involved and the relationships that they can access through this kind of shelter situation. Walk me through kind of on your side. That's my perspective of it was these people, like, I'm so scared to have you step into something that's going to be so very difficult. But what kept pushing you guys down that road and how have you processed that whole thing? Because you're still doing it. I mean,
we're still up and
We've had 36
We've had 36 kids.
Yep.
Mostly boys.
At different times, right? You can
Oh,
have
yeah.
four up to four at a time.
36 kids at a time.
Yeah, let's specify.
No, we don't. We only take 2 at a time.
Okay.
We used to we had 4 beds, but now we got rid of the bunk beds, and we're just down to 2 beds.
Okay.
Twice we had 3 boys there, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
So we felt like 2 teenage boys in that space with all the workers that are rotating through there all day long to watch them 24/7. That dynamic of 2 worked the best.
Yeah.
I don't think we would have said yes to that call if it hadn't been for the slow development of this ministry and passion within our church.
Most churches don't start there.
No.
Yeah.
No, that's not necessarily an entry place.
Yeah.
We're dealing with some of the kids that have the most trauma.
Yeah.
They're the kids that are hard to place, which is why they're in this designation within the system. And so what we've seen is that these kids that step into a stable environment are not the kids that their chart says that they are.
Yeah.
I think they're defined by most of their lives by what's written on this piece of paper. And everybody who comes in contact with that case file has an instant impression about that kid. And it changes the lens in which they view that kid. It changes the way that they respond when some little thing happens. They solidify that image if they talk back once or, and so I think one of the things that Nanette's been really good about through this process is to say, you get a clean slate when you step in here, and I'm going to love you no matter what. And you're not the kid on your chart. And you get a chance to prove that.
Yes. I tell them that church, there's many people that pray for you daily. And they love you, and they're letting you live here. Don't tear my stuff up.
Let's be clear.
Let's be clear. Don't put a hole in the wall. So we've only had like 3 incidences of pretty rough stuff. But for the most part, they're older boys. Very hard mental health diagnosis. And but many many tell me, I'm here because I don't have a place to go, and I'm here because no one wants me. And that is hard to hear.
It's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. And they also tell me quite frequently, because again, our church has said yes, which also includes the youth department, our youth pastor and our youth associate, two sweet young women, have wrapped around those kids, the ones that are safe to go and that have behaviors safe enough that they can go to our church activities. They're, of course, supervised by the worker that's watching them for that period of time. They have been welcomed tremendously, and they love going over there. And they'll come back, and they have told me many times, I felt normal for the first time in many years.
Yeah.
I can
feel like a normal kid.
just a really kind of cool moment. We had a boy that was there, and they were having a karaoke night at the church. It was like a Halloween karaoke thing. So he comes up, and he's taller than every other kid, and stands out a little bit. And by the end of the night, he's like leading
The
song up front, and he has 10 middle school kids behind him, like cheering him on, like singing the song with him. And he's a rock star for a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was his first Sunday there.
That was the first time that he'd ever been introduced to these.
And so we had him
kids.
5 weeks, and we laughed by saying, dude, you think you're a member now, because all the pastors knew him.
Yeah.
Many
In
of
5
the
weeks, the amount of the impression.
Yes. So our church is just phenomenal with the support and love for these kids. And I mean, they bought in always.
Yeah.
Even though, some Sunday mornings there are policemen there. And, we've had issues that the cops are there in the parking lot, and they just pull in and just walk across the street, go to church. Something's going on at the shelter. I'm like, yep, sorry about that, Bert.
Sorry about that, Bert. You mentioned that somebody recently was like, why would you do that? Aren't you scared? Like, do you not count the risk? Do you not count that as...
I've kind of processed that. And there's some within the church, that may be a little bit anxious about this, and that we would have those kids there, I think
those kids is the part of the problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think some of the other things, the missional character of the church has played into kind of an understanding. There's a lot of like prison ministry that happens.
It's culture.
And so there's a culture that kind of says, these people have done something, or their life is and has been this way, but that's not the sum of who they are.
Yeah.
And so I think that's given space to trust the leadership to say yes in some of those places.
And so many of our volunteers, were mentors and tutors. I mean, so many of our congregation were mentors and tutors at the boys' facility that we were involved in. And we took them on outings all the time, talk major things like the zoo, the Astros game. And I mean, there was never issues.
Yeah.
I mean, so the CWAP shelter, we're just gleaning on our history with of what, I mean, I have a pretty good gut feeling about a kid, and I know 3 times I've seen the switch, and then I've called the leadership at DFPS has been amazing, and when I call, they return my call and they fix the problem.
Yeah.
So I could say, we're fixing to lose this kid. I can tell today is not going to be good, and they will.
They know.
And they know, and they'll move them before. We've had, like I said, a couple of incidences where it did not end well.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I really don't ever worry about the risk involved to my personal safety or to.
Yeah. And to be clear, I don't ask because I think you should be concerned about the risk. I ask because that's what I hear. Not maybe explicitly, but I think a lot of times our both in the church and just personally. I mean, when we talk about taking a kid into our home or getting involved with a biological family or mentoring for a kid in an RTC, there's a lot of fear involved in that. And there's a lot of temptation, and understandable temptation, to kind of want to isolate and insulate, because it's what it is comfortable. And when I open myself up to that, there's trauma, there's so much outside of our control.
Absolutely.
There's a whole world out there that can be really scary. And so what I often hear is we couldn't do that, and it's been really wonderful to hear from you and to see how much over time the Lord has increased your capacity to handle hard things. We talk about that some with church leader training and working with stakeholders, that it's not that the hard it's not that it gets easier. It's just that our capacity to carry it with another person can grow over time. And that's kind of what you're showing today. Is you started off with just doing some diapers and a family that needed you, and you said yes. And then the Lord asked you to do more, and you said yes. And over time, he's kind of developing you as a church, and solidifying your ministry as really, really making a dent. You're really, really seeing a lot of fruit from that obedience. So I see that.
Another fruit I see is the relationships with the workers that come.
Yeah.
I love them so much. Because when we first, we knew what CWAP was, and we kind of, Merle and I would game plan, how's a day in the life of a CWAP kid going to look like? Well,
that was an eye opener.
That was an eye opener, because we really had
you
no
just kind
idea.
of we're predicting what is this going to look like.
Yeah. And we're like, getting the meals. It was the meals brought in and all the things. We have a Y membership. They can go to the Y. They've been enrolled in our school. Several have gone to the high school or the middle school. And
some have graduated. Yeah.
Yeah, we had one.
Wow.
Yeah. And the Humble ISD counselors, they're fantastic. They come to the shelter, sit with the child if possible, bring them meals. So there's a lot of community involvement. But they rotate 3 at a time, 4 at a time workers 24/7. So on just a regular day, these kids see 15 to 16 faces a day, new faces a day. So that was very disorienting to me, because when I'd go in, I started to try to learn their names. Well, it became a joke after about 50 people.
And you're pretty good with names.
Yeah.
You do.
So within about a month and a half, probably, I had met over 200 people. 150, because I used to write their names down and try to remember a little, like something to help me recall their face. But our goal was to make this the best, most safest, loving environment, so these workers will sign up to come back. So the consistency would to start to build. And then it did end up that way pretty quick. The shifts get filled really quick. I know about 50 of them on First Sight. I can tell you who they are.
What a great way to bless them.
And they love coming there. And I love hanging out with them. I go twice a day and just hang out. And they're like my friends. They're in my phone. And so that has been a huge blessing.
Amazing. Last question would be, so if there's other churches in our community who are asking the question, like, we want to get involved. We know nothing about foster care. We know nothing about how to serve along the river, but we're feeling like we need to do something. What would you say to them, just in terms of maybe where to start, but also what should they be thinking through? What could they glean from your wisdom over the last couple of years?
Like you said, don't be scared. Don't be scared.
Be brave.
Because I have people calling me from other churches, like maybe wanting to do a parent night out. What does that look like? And they're nervous. I'm like, it's not a big deal. Just have an event. Everybody get together and just love these children for 2 hours. And let the parents go have a meal in the quiet.
So don't be fearful.
Don't be fearful, and call Amber Knoll.
Right.
The Riverside Project is amazing, and your resources are wonderful. And
it's our hope to really just replicate, I mean, when you said people call you to talk about doing a parent night out, I'm sending them to you.
Okay.
We're kind of sending different people, or, we're saying there's a church that pops up and says, I think we want to, based on if we give them the resources to understand their community better. Let's not meet all the needs that we think exist in the community. Let's find out what the needs actually are in your community based on where your church is. And then we can say, here's some ideas. And then if they say, there's a lot of foster families in our area, there's not a parent night out, let's start there. That could be a great way. We have a good kid, children's space. And then it's shift over to Nanette.
Yeah.
She's done this before. I can't speak to the ins and outs of running that every day, the practicals, but I know people who can, and I'm going to make that connection. And I have heard, actually, I know another church in Tomball replicated what y'all did, and I had a friend who sent their kids to that parent night out, and she texted me and said, do you partner with this church? Because they did this parent night out, and it was phenomenal. And so I'm thinking, way to go to that church, but also I know where they learned that, and they learned it from you. And so that is what our vision is, this ecosystem where, yes, we want to be an organization that helps to make those connections and equips our churches and helps them understand the community. Like, we need all that, but it's more so not just really us, it's everyone working together and not being afraid to be like, we're going to call the other church in a totally different denomination that may believe things that are different.
Yes.
All that's out the window when it comes to caring for the vulnerable.
I'd say from a church side, if you're a church looking to kind of get involved in this work, begin with prayer.
Yeah.
If you start heading in this direction and it's not where God is leading you, then it's not gonna work, because it's hard. It's messy. And if it isn't for the sustaining power of God that's led you each step, if God hasn't brought the people into your path to gain a passion for this, if it's just check boxes on a to-do list, then it's just not gonna work. And so I'd say a first step is just begin to pray that God would give you the heart for this work.
Yeah, it's been so great to witness the fruitfulness of after you've said yes, and seeing, bringing more and more people into that vision. So thank you for everything that you do, as hard as it is, for continuing to be present. So we're here with you always. We're here to support you. We're here to get you what you need, make any connection you need. But we're really grateful for the work you do.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
To those listening, we hope these conversations have inspired you to find your place along the river. And we welcome you to join us in bringing hope and renewal to the city of Houston. If you'd like more information on how to get involved, please visit riversideproject.org and submit a contact form. We'll see you next time.